Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. We're live from Los Angeles, and I'm going to be talking about the Phillips watches online auction, the Geneva sessions. This selection is based out of Geneva and actually has a lot of heavy hitters and some very interesting pieces. There are hardly any fillers, which is pretty much what really distinguishes Phillips's curation, that they don't take any risks, that they always uh, curate watches that will surely sell with initial pre auction estimates that sound attractive enough, compelling enough, um, that it would pull in people who even vaguely think about bidding. And generally, the selection of price ranges and different brackets really are great. These are mostly on the more uh, popular and on the more expensive side of things, but I'm sure we will enjoy them a lot. A lot of heavy hitters that we will discuss. I'm putting the link there in the chat. The StreamYard link is there too if you want to join the panel and talk these watches with me. You guys know the rules by and large in general when it comes to auctions on this channel. Uh, you should feel free to drop in the lot number in the chat, ideally with a super chat, of course, which I will take up immediately and try to fill you in with as much horological and historical detail as possible. Otherwise, I will just go through the watches one by one, more or less. Shabbat Shalom, Ryan. Nice to see you. Um, and, at some point, we'll get into other things as well. As people are trickling in, I will start with talking about some of the posts that I've made on Instagram recently, and we'll warm up from there and go forward. So a lot of interesting stuff happening. I didn't take a bet uh, on this. Perhaps I should have. I will start by highlighting an older post where someone was more or less taunting me by saying that, oh, I can't believe Sabalenka is still world number one in women's tennis because she has barely won anything recently, and that she's sure to go out at the U.S. Open sooner than later. And here we are, about 2 weeks after that. She has actually accomplished the elusive repeat, which is something that no one had done um, after Serena Williams in 2014. So more than a decade later, finally, there's another woman who has won the U.S. Open back to back, and it is the Belarusian number one, Arina Sabalenka, the Tiger, who also happens to be an ambassador of AP. AP signed her on really in the run up to the US Open last year. So, about 13, 14 months ago. And she has amassed a great collection in the time being with some incredible pieces, very flashy pieces like this one, but also even some vintage stuff that I've explored on my feed on Instagram. So please do follow, scroll through, find whatever attracts you, find your bonheur, as the French say, and please don't forget to leave some likes and comments in the process. It really does help, as it helps here. So please hit the like button. This is an AP chronograph that is iced out at the factory exactly as it left the Le Brassus manufacture. It is in 18 karat pink gold, and absolutely stunning. And she has actually worn this watch too when she was lifting the trophy that is made by Tiffany and Company. Now, coming back to what I posted since yesterday, I had an interesting find. Kris Jenner and Corey Gamble, who have been an item for a while now, were out at a charity event, I think a couple of days ago. And what Corey Gamble had on the wrist actually surprised me, not because he doesn't wear great watches. I think his collection is also pretty interesting and very varied as well, between some horological heavy hitters and more uh, recent hype pieces. But this one is not really common, simply because it's extremely rare, right? I think the manufacturer itself estimates that about 150 examples were made in this particular configuration. This is a Vacheron Constantin open-worked ultra-thin perpetual calendar in platinum. Much like the perpetual calendars by other perpetual calendars by Audemars Piguet and Vacheron Constantin from the era, from all the way from the 80s into early 2000s. It uses the classic self-winding ultra thin movement by JLC, the 920 as its base. Caliber 1120 QP is the particular designation here, and differently from AP's reworking of it, it actually has what has by now become a Vacheron signature of sorts. At 12 o'clock. You have the entire 4-year cycle, basically, for the monthly indication, which, of course, doubles up by that virtue as a leap year indicator as well. Beautiful lapis lazuli disc for the moon phase indicator that serves as a fantastic backdrop as the night sky of that scene. I think there's even a more rare variant with blue subdials, which I've never seen in person, but they do exist. And there are some variants even with bezel sets with diamonds. And of course, this exists in yellow gold as well. Although even that is quite rare. I think probably altogether, Vacheron must have made about 500 examples of these over a period of roughly 20 years. So it's a pretty stellar watch, and really has great workmanship on it. Of course, what you see here is the Dubois de Prat module for the perpetual calendar, which is still used in the ultra-thin perpetual calendars that Vacheron Constantin puts out today. And open working is just delightful, with, of course, all sorts of classic techniques, including beveling by hand, including vertical brushing, including mirror polishing, and of course the rotor itself is open work to bring the Maltese cross, the brand's symbol, into sharp relief, and the details are hand engraved with what are mostly floral motifs. Beautiful piece. Speaking of the U.S. Open, here is the Houston Rockets guard, former NBA champion with the Raptors. Ha. Well, they're staying together, apparently, Captain Kirk, so we might have to wait for that. We're looking at Fred VanVleet, who was attending the US Open. He's also the president of the National Basketball Players Association, too. And he's wearing a classic Aquanauts chronograph in stainless steel, which is how the complication was introduced to the lineup back in 2018. And this piece is offered with both the black and the orange strap, but I think the orange strap really brings out the sporty, the more playful aspects of the watch that are, of course, pardon me, all the way present with the orange accents on the dial, which include the chronograph hands as well. Yeah, I think after all these years, I still like the Aquanaut more, and this has to be probably my favorite variant of it in the lineup. Not necessarily in stainless steel. I think it's really fantastic in the two shades of gold in which it exists, white gold and pink gold. To me, it just looks more balanced, right? I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I always feel that in the standard time and date versions of the Aquanauts, I feel there's too much negative space at 6 o'clock, and besides being so uncluttered for a chronograph dial with a single register at 6, this also has some sort of counterbalancing aspect thanks to that register, and I really, really do like how this watch looks. Again, everybody, thank you for being here. Please hit the like button. We are going to jump right in to the Phillips auction, the Geneva sessions. I think it's an absolutely killer curation. Here's the link once again. And if you want me to prioritize any particular piece, please feel free to hit the like button. I used the cover girl for the thumbnail of my live stream today as well. I think it was pretty obvious. You can call it the Nautilus Offshore with its 44 millimeter white gold case. We'll get to it, but it certainly gives you an idea of the kinds of crazy things we might yet see for the 50th anniversary, which is obviously slated for next year. I can't believe we're only 1 year away from the 50th anniversary of the Nautilus. But I guess we're all getting old, especially me. I'll start with something that I wasn't expecting to see here. It's the lot number 3, the Cartier Cloche, or Cloche de Cartier, which is actually number 13. I have actually talked about this watch on my Instagram, which it was in one of those posts that I did first and everyone else stole, of course, without giving any credit. But it was Jules Koundé, whose taste I really admire, and who's a footballer, a defender who plays for the France national team, as well as Barcelona. he wears a lot of great watches, and he has a very eclectic taste as well. So he has a lot of vintage pieces, a lot of more design-oriented watches, but also some very interesting contemporary stuff too. What I really admire is really the fact that he expresses his own taste. Um, Honestly, his own discernment in his collection. I think that's really beautiful. And it was actually during the Paris Fashion Week that he was wearing this watch, which is a limited edition in a platinum for the Cartier boutique on Rue de la Paix, right? Because they are number 13 there, hence the number 13 at 12 instead of the Roman 12. But let's take a closer look at that watch, which is a beautiful salmon tinted dial. That's special editions coming out of this particular maison have focused on. Of course, it has a ruby cabochon on the beaded crown, which is what usually accompanies um, the platinum cased Cartiers. And it actually comes with a pair of double-sided cufflinks as well. It's a fantastic touch. The cloche is by far not my favorite shape or design by Cartier, but I certainly do appreciate this particular edition. You guys know I'm a sucker for salmon dial, and I've been clamoring for its proliferation, which is probably the only time God has listened to me, and it has actually happened. It's kind of a hype now, kind of a trend that brands, especially for their more elegant, dressier offerings, more often than not, come out with a salmon dial, and to me, it's very pleasant to see that, and that's lot number 3. By the way, there's more than 5 days for this auction to close, so plenty of time for things to develop. But this piece had a pre-auction estimate in the range between 37,300 to 74,700 in US dollars, and it is currently being bid at 42,000 Swiss francs, which of course is about 52 and a half, I think, 52 and a half thousand in US dollars, roughly speaking. At lot number 2, you have what the collectors fondly call the Space Panda. This is the white gold Daytona on Oyster Flex from the previous generation, 116519 LN dash 0038. It has the meteorite dial with contrasting black chronograph registers, which actually pair quite well with the Cerachrome, with the ceramic tachymeter bezel. Of course, the meteorite dials are back once again, and there are now again some options in the current lineup as well. But I think this is still one of the classic uh, options. Again, if you like a Panda dial Daytona, which most people who like the Daytona do, this adds a little bit of pizzazz, a little bit of spice, a little bit of an extra nuance to it. That's lot number 2. The pre-auction estimate stands at around 49,700 to 99,300 in US dollars, and it is currently being bid at 55,000 in Swiss francs. And I will open it in the back here so I can have the direct conversion, which is right around 68,900 in US dollars. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a Daytona. Lot number 1 is Berneron. They have made their mark as an independent maker with this particular design, with this particular artistic asymmetric design. They have later come out with smaller cased versions of this watch, the Mirage, with semi-precious stone dials. And most recently, and officially at the Geneva Watch Days, they have just introduced a very different watch, a complicated round-cased watch, an annual calendar specifically, which announces the arrival of a brand, more than just a single design, more than a one-trick pony. A very exciting and interesting direction for a brand that I was, so far at least, not really interested in. But this is sort of their entry into the market. The Mirage in Prussian blue, with its unique asymmetric case shape that, of course, rides on the wave of the burgeoning popularity of the design watch, with record-breaking sales for the immeasurable hype around the Cartier crash, for example. Berneron, with this design, actually won the Audacity Prize in the last edition of the GPHG, of which the nominees we have discussed in the last 2 episodes, so feel free to check them out whenever you can. This piece is executed in 18 karat white gold, of course, with Prussian blue details, as the model name already indicates well. And the dimensions are roughly 34 millimeters in width and 38 millimeters in length. What I do appreciate about the design of this piece is the fact that it also has a uniquely designed bespoke caliber that goes with it, right? It's not just some random movement that's been slightly modified and somehow fitted to the case, right? Asymmetric watch, asymmetric movement, which is uniquely designed down to the balance bridge, right? Even that takes its inspiration, takes its inclination from the misshapen design of the watch. That is actually lot number 1 for the Berneron Mirage in Prussian blue. The estimate was set between 49,800 to 99,600 in US dollars. The current bid is actually the high ceiling of that estimate. It stands at 80,000 Swiss francs, which is almost 100,000 in US dollars. Thank you, Ryan. Captain Kirk says about the earlier Cartier cloche, it takes design guts to put a 13 on the dial. Indeed, it does. But then again, this is not the first to have come in that series. So there's already at least a niche legacy of platinum limited editions, or platinum exclusive editions, I should say, of Cartier's watches that are coming out of the number 13 Rue de la Paix for quite some time. It's kind of like the London crash, right? Where you have these London boutique exclusive versions of the Cartier crash that are, allocated in very limited numbers. Supposedly only 2 pieces a month are allocated there. These are exactly like that. It's not a numbered edition that's, let's say, capped at 40 or 50, although chances are that in the 4 or 5 years where that exclusive run is made, there are probably not going to be more than 50, at most 4 dozen to 50 watches that would actually come out of this run, out of this edition. Let's change gears a little bit. This is one of my favorite Patek pieces. Of recent time. We're looking at a split seconds chronograph in platinum, a 5370P-011, which refers to the blue enamel dial. As you see, the case is executed in platinum, paired with a platinum déployant clasp. Of course, there's that additional solid case back if you just want to feel the heft of that watch on your wrist rather than what you can peek through the exhibition case back, which in this case actually is worth a look. I think, yeah, it's certainly the perfect watch to wear while playing backgammon, sheshbesh. I can certainly see it on the wrists of some of the Persian Jewish uncles, in Beverly Hills, who play backgammon in all the public parks you can find in the environs. But honestly, this is a beautiful piece. I love a hand-wound chronograph from a prestige house, and obviously, what better can you imagine with Patek that has a modern movement, a slightly enlarged platinum case, and a very special blue enamel dial. This reference 5370 P in platinum was introduced about a decade ago with a black enamel dial, but this is the one that came out about 5 years ago, I think, with a blue dial. Beautiful Breguet numerals. Over that blue enamel dial. A tachymeter scale on the periphery. loomed feuille hands, leaf-shaped hands. Beautiful, beautiful piece. Of course, emaille refers to the enamel material of the dial. It's not, thankfully, Patek doesn't make any watches yet that give you access to your emails. Really beautiful piece. I kind of dig the lifestyle pictures that they paired the pieces with for this auction. So I'm not complaining. It wasn't a snarky comment that I made about the uncles playing backgammon. I love watching the game. At the very least, I can tell you that. This is actually one of those pieces that have not yet attracted any offers, which is not not that outrageous. Actually, a lot of times people wait for the, of course, for the later phases of the auction, usually even the last day, if not even the last 10 minutes, to be actually able to snipe these kinds of pieces. This particular piece doesn't exist even anymore in the lineup. It's been replaced by a pink gold version, which has actually a pretty unique and I think also still very stunning brown beige enamel dial as well, although this is my favorite. Um, hey, who doesn't like a blue dial, right? And a blue enamel dial is pretty special. It's not something you see every day. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you. On that note, I will open a super chat goal. Maybe that will help me go until the midnight. Maybe if I get 5 super chats of $4.99 or more, $5 or more, I'll do an extra hour of watch talk and maybe talk a little bit about some of the releases from the Geneva watch days, some of the novelties that have come out in the last few days. Honestly, I've been waiting for this auction for quite a while. They had a little preview where they were showing a few of the pieces, but honestly, I wasn't expecting to find so many great ones, all in one clear swoop. I do want to pull. Where is that? There was the. Pardon me. Number 43 actually is extremely interesting to me. Um, this is probably. I mean, I don't know if you will get this kind of deal on a public auction, but this watch that you can find on lot 43 is probably some of the best deals you can get on the secondary market on a Grand Sonnerie wristwatch. Um, this is the yellow gold model of the Jules Audemars Grand Sonnerie, reference 25750 BA. The Grand Sonnerie is a particular kind of chiming watch that automatically chimes the hours and the quarters. When you see that slide at 2 o'clock, that's exactly the switch that allows you to toggle between silent, petite, which only strikes at quarter hours, and Grande Sonnerie, which chimes, hours, and quarters. And the pusher you have at 10 is what sounds out, what chimes the quarters on demand. All right, so it's a very stunning watch. I'm kind of disappointed that they don't have a shot of the movement, because that's what really takes the cake for these kinds of pieces. And I'm gonna pull a shot of that from some other corner of the internet. It's also a very rare piece, right? Only made in about 50 examples in the late 90s. And apparently this example comes in its original presentation box. So a pretty interesting set. Let me see if I can find a picture of the movement, which at the end of the day is really the most interesting part of this watch. Not going to waste too much time because I don't want to take the air out of what can be otherwise a very interesting conversation. But that really sucks. Yeah, the only one I can find is the open worked version, which, as long as it's not false advertising, right? This is not what the inside looks for this particular watch. But here is the open worked version of the Grande Sonnerie movement that's inside that watch. I mean, again, as much as I appreciate the more industrial, more contemporary take on skeletonized dials and the open worked movements that brands like Audemars Piguet are really leading these days, I still love a throwback, vintage, neo-vintage open working, which has these sorts of more ornate, floral hand engravings. I mean, it's really, it makes it all the more special for me. And obviously, that's how I would like to see a chiming watch, more than something that has an has like an anthracite gray industrial look. Captain Kirk says, wow. Watch Addict says, what are your thoughts on curved lug leather straps on watches? I love them. By the way, not only on leather straps, I have been bothering once every so often, whenever I find free time, I send to the Tropic rubber strap brand, which is a revival of the vintage Tropic branded rubber straps that were all the rage, in the 70s and so on. Once every so often, I send them an email or a DM on Instagram saying, like, you should really bring back the curved and rubber straps as you used to, because they don't make them anymore. That didn't come back with the revival of the brand. I like it. Speaking of the chronomètre bleu that you were talking about, right? FP Jaune did that for quite some time. I think it's still the case that they present all their leather strap watches with curved end leather straps. Obviously, this is not an original leather strap that comes with the Jaune, but yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, for me, affirmative. It's not a must. I'm not, I'm not obsessed with it. I like integrated designs, but classic dress watches don't necessarily fall within that paradigm. But when you have not only curved spring bars, but leather straps that are designed with those curved ends, leather straps that sometimes even integrate metal end links so that they would sit even more flush with the case. I think all those could enhance certain aspects of the watch. I think for classic dress watches, it's not a must. For things that are a little more contemporary or a little more sporty, why not? Why not? Again, Jaune does it really well. Speaking of AP, let's stick with an absolute classic. I think this is still the sweet spot when it comes to a Royal Oak Jumbo, the 15202, which is an early 2000s creature, but it was actually renewed for the 40th anniversary to come aesthetically as close as possible without exactly replicating or duplicating it to the original Jumbo. It's in stainless steel. It's with a blue Petite Tapisserie dial that has the initials logo at 6 o'clock, as was the case with Gérard Genta's original design. Pardon me. And much like the Jubilee edition that they initially introduced in 1992, which brought the exhibition case back, it does have an exhibition case back, which gives you a nice look onto the caliber 2121, which is essentially AP's version of the self-winding tractor movement JLC 920 with a nice open-worked rotor that integrates aspect of the octagonal bezel, aspects of the original design onto its own design as well. It's a 15202, nothing too different about it, but perhaps that's part of the appeal. The pre-auction estimate was set at 37,200 to 74,300, and the piece is currently being bid at 35,000 Swiss francs, which adds up to about 43,850 roundabout. That's lot number 4 for an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Jumbo Extra Thin 15202 ST. Another classic, another uh, anniversary edition, so to speak, the so-called Kermit Submariner that originally came out in 2003. And, the pieces that came out in that year, so the Y serial pieces, the earlier Y serial pieces, are of course a little more desired, especially those examples that are also distinguished with the specific flat 4 bezel, which of course refers to the fact that rather than having a sharp tip at the 4, the flat 4 bezels have a more flat end there at the top of the 4. This is a 2005 example, so perhaps not the most desirable variant, but it still preserves that aesthetic of a classic Submariner with a black dial, but a green aluminum bezel insert. If you really want to geek out about this particular reference, of course, there are about 6 different shades of green throughout the series, from the actual 50th anniversary all the way to the time when the production was stopped. Akianova says, I just started looking at these Royal Oaks from early 2000s. I love the dials with the power reserve as well. Those are the dual time pieces. So the other sub dial is actually a dual time indication. Let me pull up an example. They exist in 39 millimeters as well, which is possibly what you were referring to. The reference for that, I think, is 20, 25 730 is the 36 millimeter right here. So you see the other subdial is actually the one at 6 o'clock, is a full second time zone or reference time dial, and then you have a pointer date as well as a power reserve indication. And then you have the I think it was, why did I lose this link? There was a Yeah, 26 120, I think, is the 39 millimeter reference. The complicated Royal Oaks for a long time used to be in 36 millimeter, other than the chronograph and the perpetual calendar, which had similar dimensions, certainly the same diameter as the jumbo at 39 millimeter. Again, mind you, they can be found for even cheaper, possibly, but again, this is a 36 millimeter watch, great for my wrist. You know, if your wrist is on the skinnier side, it will work perfectly for you, but that's something to keep in mind. We were looking at lot number 10 from these Geneva sessions, the Phillips online auction that is going to close in about 5 more days. This piece is currently being bid at 10,000 in Swiss francs, which is roughly 12,500 in US dollars. Please hit the like button, by the way. It's so nice to see you all. Thank you for your support. If you do want to support the stream, support the work that I'm doing with this channel and on Instagram, feel free to use some of the ways that YouTube offers you. The channel memberships, whether you want to buy one for yourself or gift others, is a great way to support the channel, and it does give access to some great exclusive archival content. And of course, if you want me to answer any specific questions, whether it is about this particular lot in this auction or anything else that is watch related, you should feel free to send that in with a super chat as well. We're looking at lot number 13, which is a Cartier reference 4466. This was in my opinion, this was the hottest new release in 2023. The Cartier Santos Dumont micro rotor skeleton. It came out in 3 variants, which was yellow gold with blue lacquered accents, pink gold, and stainless steel. I think the yellow gold version was certainly a limited edition with 150 pieces, and the rest were more freely available. And probably the stainless steel was the version that is the most bang for the buck. These are the XL cases of the Santos Dumont, which is actually a relatively conservatively sized dress watch. It is like 31 millimeters in diameter and 8 millimeters thick. I mean, I think it's the large more than the X large. If I correct myself here, it also has the charming detail where a miniature version of Santos Dumont's plane Demoiselle finds its place on the micro rotor. and you have a nice view of the movement, which is specifically designed, of course, for this model. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful piece at lot 13. Doesn't look too shabby from the back either. Very unique. Honestly, I think it looks the best in stainless steel and pink gold at any rate, even though the yellow gold is, of course, limited and therefore more rare. This piece had a pre-auction estimate that was set in the range roughly between 15,000 to 30,000 US dollars. It is, however, already being bid at 15,000 Swiss francs, which is almost 18,800 in US dollars. Again, the auction closes in more than 5 days, so still lots to develop in the meantime. Yasha V says, all these skeleton mechanisms are just troublesome, especially the open mainspring. They start spewing gunk all over. Honestly, I've seen that very rarely. I don't know. Maybe I've been just lucky, fortunate to be around some decent examples. But look, I mean, it's a general rule of thumb. You know, the more complexity, whether we're talking about artistic complexity, and this is even more the case with technical complexity, the more complications, the more these sorts of artistic elements are involved with a watch, the more risks there are with upkeep, right? You know, the enamel dials are beautiful, but you know, there's a chance that if you drop your watch, that they might just crack, right? The modern materials are used in dials for good reason. So we can romanticize open worked movements and enamel dials all we want, and I'm not going to deny that they have certain risks, like what you mentioned, but it's not really something that you encounter every day with every single skeletonized mechanism. If you have an entire collection of open work dial watches, I'm sure you'll do it more. You will encounter it more often. Let's calm ourselves down with something more classic and less controversial then, and look at lot 12, which is again another absolute neo-vintage classic. This is my favorite, relatively accessible Patek Philippe perpetual calendar, the classic 36 millimeter sized one, 3940, 3940J here specifically. It owes part of its elegance to the micro rotor caliber that powers it, which is in this case caliber 240Q. And that movement actually has a remarkable 2-day power reserve for a caliber of its age, so to speak, of its era. That's pretty impressive. The dial layout is, of course, very classic and conservative, where you have the leap year indicator, which is encircled by the month indication at 3, day of the week, which surrounds the 24-hour/day-night indication at 9 o'clock, and you will see there's a subtle degradation of color within that subdial, where you can distinguish day hours from night hours. And of course, there's a moon phase indicator, which is surrounded by a pointer date at 6 o'clock. Beautiful Dauphine style hands, which are matched with obus or bullet shaped multifaceted hour markers. Absolute beauty. Again, relatively uncontroversial. The yellow gold is probably the most common example you can find of this reference. Fewer examples in white gold and pink gold, even more rarely in platinum. This particular piece is from early 2000s, and it is accompanied by its certificate of origin, additional solid case back, the setting pin, tag, all sorts of product literature, as well as its presentation box and outer packaging. Pardon me. That is lot 12 for the Patek Philippe Perpetual Calendar 3940J-014. The pre-auction estimate is set between 31,200 to 62,300 in US dollars. The piece is currently being bid at 40,000 Swiss francs, which is just north of 50,000 in US dollars. Nope, it's not a hunter back. It's just an additional solid case back, which basically means that it's an exhibition case back, but you can snap on, in this case, the solid case back if you rather prefer to feel the heft of the watch, as it were, rather than peek through the crystal case back when you turn it over. It's just a convenience that Patek provides with these kinds of prestige pieces. Lot 19 is a very desirable, you might even say aspirational, variant of one of F.B. Jean's signature lines, chronomètre résonance, the so-called parkometer or parking meter version. Of course, F.B. Jean made the chronomètre résonance for the principle, really, to demonstrate in the world of wristwatches what his master, so to speak, Breguet, had already tried in pocket watches. Of course, it's much more impressive because of how François-Paul Jean could do this, could realize this in a 38 millimeter cased watch. Of course, this is a later 2012 version, so it's a 40 millimeter piece in platinum, but the earliest examples of the chronomètre résonance, whether we're talking about the first generation or even the subscription or pre-subscription pieces, this example takes even more seriously and literally the use that a lot of people put their resonance pieces into, which was to use it essentially as a dual time watch, where you had the two separate dials, which actually have their independent gear trains, set to different time zones, right? And in this case, you have them distinguished not only by sheer juxtaposition being left and right, but also by the way of their indication, right? You have on the right-hand side a more traditional silver guilloche dial with Arabic numerals, and on the left-hand side you have the slightly smaller parkometer style display that indicates time with a digital rotating disc, a 24-hour disc, as well as, of course, a 60-minute disc. And of course, when that principle of resonance works, the seconds hand will actually synchronize. And of course, there is the power reserve indicator right there in the middle. Platinum piece with a white gold dial and a pink gold movement. As you can see, the two balance wheels set in close proximity. This is the parking meter. FP Jaune chronomètre à résonance at lot 19 in platinum. The pre-auction estimate was set somewhere between 150,000 to 300,000 in US dollars, and the watch is already being bid at 190,000 in Swiss francs, with more than 5 days to go, and that's almost 240,000 in US dollars. I have about half an hour more to go, since I'm not really receiving much of any encouragement in terms of support. But hey, at least you can give me likes and share whenever you can the links, whether we are talking about the Instagram platform or YouTube here. So at least help me increase the community. Lot 17 is a legacy machine by MBNF, Max Büsser and Friends, which is a brand that's celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. This is the legacy machine split escapement. Maximilian Büsser's independent brand began its adventure with horological machines that were more disruptive and took more challenges, especially in terms of their design. But soon enough, with an initiative that started around 2012, he started counterbalancing that with his legacy machines, which are more classically styled round pieces that still didn't give up on some of the more inventive and innovative aspects of the brands, but encased it, perhaps presented it in a more, more conservative, more traditional, you might say, design, a round case. This was part of a limited edition of 33 pieces in titanium with a teal dial of the Legacy machine split escapement, with its distinctive domed sapphire crystal, white lacquered subdials, and an oversized 14 millimeter balance wheel that is suspended above the dial, which became part of the inevitable visual signature of the brand. This is one of those movements that was developed in collaboration with the Irish watchmaker Stephen McDonnell. He also developed the perpetual calendar and chronograph mechanisms for them. Beautiful piece with a 72-hour power reserve, and very distinctive iridescent, slightly textured teal dial that serves as the background of this horological showpiece. Suspended balance, hours and minutes at the traditional 12 o'clock on the larger subdial, and then you have roughly at 4 o'clock a power reserve indicator 0 to 72, and then a pointer dates at around 8 o'clock. And the crown is placed at the traditional 2 o'clock spot. Here's a look at the movements, as you can see, signed by the designer Stephen McDonnell. The piece, as I mentioned, is in titanium, and it is 44 millimeters in diameter, so it's a relatively large piece, but I think it is part of the aesthetic, right? Part of that dial. It's part of presenting and giving enough real estate to that distinctive dial layout. Lot 20 is a relatively recent release. This was a collaboration between the independent watchmaker Vienna Alter, which provided the design, and Louis Erard, which is a smaller size brand that particularly made a mark with their regulator style watches. These are the watches that have inspiration from a bygone era of horology, where you had these regulator clocks as the centerpieces of watchmaking workshops, watch repair workshops, as well as train stations, where you would have the minute hand at the center for people to be able to synchronize their watches. As you can see, it was a matter of precision. In the watchmaking workshops, it was a matter of life and death as part of the railroads. Here, it is mostly an aesthetic, and if you like it, I think it's a pretty distinctive and cool aesthetic too. Again, speaking of the diameter, of the size of the watch, that was probably my The only thing that held me back from ordering one of these pieces, 43 millimeters in diameter in stainless steel, it has a lot of the elements of the design code that distinguishes the Antiqua, with especially those polished beads, right, that decorate the bezel, that provide the beads on the crown. Beautiful vertically satin brushed backdrop on the dial with salmon tinted sectors, minutes at the center, and an asymmetric dial, a large subdial for the hours, and a smaller eccentric subdial for the small seconds as well. One of 178 pieces. Again, if the size is not a problem, aesthetically speaking, at least, it's a pretty fascinating piece. And it does come, of course, with the full set of its original accessories. Lot number 20, which is a collaboration between Louis Erard and Vienna Alter, the regulator watch with that distinctive aesthetic that belongs to Vienna Alter's retrofuturistic design language. This is a piece that started with no reserve, but an estimate that was set between 3,800 to 7,500 in US dollars. It is currently being bid at 1,800 in Swiss francs, which is a little more than 2,250 in US dollars. That was lot 20. Again, if you want to direct my attention to anything else in this auction, feel free to super chat the lot number, and I will be more than happy to dive right in and give you as much horological and historical detail on that particular piece. Shifting gears a little bit to something that's a little more out there. This is one of my favorite Royal Oaks of all time, with its sheer size being one of the things that always held me back. This is the Royal Oak Tourbillon chronograph, lot number 30, reference 25977 ST. This is a piece that was made roughly for a decade between the years of 2003 to 2013. And it actually builds on the base of that famous Lemania chronograph movement that gave us many great watches, from the original Omega Moonwatch, the Speedmaster Moonwatch, all the way to Patek Philippe perpetual calendars up until the reference 5970. This, of course, has a tourbillon, which is here at 6 o'clock in a relatively oversized cage with a 30-minute totalizer at 3, and continuous running seconds at 6, classic tapestry dial with a triangle at 12 o'clock. And here's a look at that hand-wound chronograph movement, which is beautifully decorated. Lot 30, the AP Royal Oak tourbillon chronograph, 44 millimeters in stainless steel with a black Cantapisserie dial, reference 25977 ST. The pre-auction estimate sets its value somewhere between 31,100 to 62,200 in US dollars, and the piece is currently being bid at 30,000 in Swiss francs, which amounts to 37,500, a little more than 37,500. We're looking at the Geneva sessions, the Phillips watch auctions, online auction based out of Geneva. Lot 35 is the white dialed version of the previous generation of Patek Philippe Nautilus Jumbo, the so-called piano dial. The color combination is very similar actually to the so-called Polar Explorer 2, right, where you have a white backdrop, like a snow white backdrop with blackened dial furniture. A white dial for the Nautilus first came out for the mid-sized version, the reference 3800. The 5711 also had a white dial version, which was incredibly unpopular, actually, when it was in the lineup. And it took that incredible hype around the entire model for the white dial itself to finally take off. And once it was discontinued in 2019, that of course made it even more popular and sought after, as it usually happens. This is otherwise exactly the equal of a blue dial 5711 in every way, in terms of its, as long as the two pieces are contemporary, in terms of its movements, in terms of its bracelet, in terms of its case. It's just a different dial color, which when it was in production, again, for the most part, was not really all that sought after. This particular example comes from May 2018 with its certificate of origin, fitted presentation box, and outer packaging. At lot 35, the Patek Philippe Nautilus Jumbo with the piano dial in stainless steel. Its value was estimated to be somewhere between $50,000 to $100,000 in the US currency. And with more than 5 days to go, the piece is currently being bid at 65,000 Swiss francs, which is almost 81,500 in US dollars. Akenova, that's really cheap considering its complications and tourbillon. I'm guessing you're referring to the 25,977. Obviously, there's more than 5 days to go, so how, where it will end up is anyone's guess. But on the secondary market, for the kind of complications it puts together, the Royal Oak tourbillon chronograph is actually a very decent package. Of course, it's the outsized dimensions that scares most people away, and I'm included in that group as well. But it's a stunning watch. I mean, if you're building a serious Royal Oak collection, I think this has to be there. It really, really does have to be there. Especially because it pays homage to that classic hand-wound Lemania caliber in such a unique way. At lot 31, we have a Daniel Roth tourbillon perpetual calendar that commemorates the 15th anniversary of the brand, launched in year 2004, made in 15 pieces. Surprise, surprise. It has a perpetual calendar with a retrograde date indicator. It's rendered in platinum. Within the second subdial, it has a triple marking for number 15 in Roman numerals. Has a retrograde date indicator at the very center of the dial that overlaps in the form of a downward facing crescent with that subdial that we were just talking about. A leap year indicator that's within that circle. Two apertures, again, at the top of that second subdial for the day of the week and the month. Here's a look through the case back, which is also marked for those 15 years and with the particular number of the watch in the series. And of course, the tourbillon, which is visible through the case back. That's lot 31 for the Daniel Roth tourbillon perpetual calendar, which is a limited edition marking the 15th anniversary of the brand. Of course, this is after Daniel Roth has left, so it does belong to the more industrial era of the brand, but it's still an interesting watch and an intriguing combination of complications. I have about 10 more minutes, so I will maybe talk about two more watches. And tomorrow I can certainly come back to this. I think I'm going to choose something that I teased on the thumbnail, so that I will leave that to last. And also one of my favorites of so-called When John Mayer actually marked out in his second installment of Talking Watches, um, the two precious metal Daytonas that were up until then mostly neglected by the collecting community, probably due to the hype around the stainless steel pieces with the ceramic bezels. He actually singled out the 116508 with the green dial, the yellow gold original John Mayer Daytona. But he was also presenting this particular piece in white gold with a blue sunburst blue dial and red accents, which I think is also a beautiful piece. This lot is also listed without reserve, and the proceeds of the timepiece will be charitably devolved by the seller to Fondazione Ospedale Infantile Regina Margherita, Children's Hospital, a Turin-based Queen Margherita Children's Hospital. This is one of the later examples in the series, comes from year 2022. The reference 116509, the Rolex Cosmograph Daytona in 18 karat white gold, presented on a matching oyster bracelet and with its sunburst style, very sporty looking watch, owing also to the red accents, which it shares with the John Mayer 116508. And it is currently being bid at 35,000 in Swiss francs, which is nearing 44,000 in US dollars. Thank you, Akenova. I appreciate it. I appreciate each and every one of you, especially those of you who have followed from Instagram and chosen to support me on the YouTube channel as well. I do these live streams at least 4 times a week, and I try to do them more and more often. And hopefully with your support, it will become a much more regular thing. Again, if you want to further support the channel with any of the ways that YouTube provides you, you are more than welcome. This is a completely independent channel that enjoys absolutely no form of support from anyone in the industry, no brands, no auction houses, no gray market dealers. I don't have any sponsors, which gives me the absolute editorial freedom so I can serve only you and your interests, so I can look out for ways as to how you can best spend your hard-earned money as an advisor, as a consultant. And if you want to support that endeavor, if you want to support that enterprise, there are also further ways that I outline in the video description as well. But it's already possible through YouTube too. We are looking at one of the 40th anniversary editions of the Nautilus. This was the chronograph, and it is actually a very special version of the Nautilus chronograph because of its 44 millimeter white gold case. It was a limited run of 1,300 pieces, so it's not supremely rare, but because most of it, it is a very unique version of the chronograph that doesn't exist really in any other form. It still enjoys quite an hefty premium that matches the heft of its 44 millimeter diameter white gold case, which remains the largest in the history of the entire design. This was proposed alongside a platinum Nautilus Jumbo, the 5711 Line 1P, and it has a so-called tombstone dial where it has the two dates, right, 1976 to 2016 with the number 40 engraved on the dial, and also baguette cut diamonds that serve as hour markers and that are abbreviated at 5 and 7 and doubled at 12 o'clock, abbreviated at 3, 5, and 7 and doubled at 12 o'clock. The shade of the blue for the dial is also quite unique, both in the platinum jumbo that was part of the 40th anniversary celebrations and this chronograph. Otherwise, the chronograph is powered by Patek's modern self-winding column wheel, vertical clutch, chronograph movement that also has the flyback functionality, which means that you can use the centrally deployed seconds hand as your seconds hand. You can just keep it moving and use the flyback function to restart the chronograph, to reset the chronograph anytime you actually want to time something, because it will immediately snap back, set everything to 0, and start going again. It has a crosshair style single chronograph register at 6 with the hour counter in the outermost circle and with a full 60 minutes totalizer that is separated to 2 sectors for the first 30 minutes and then within the innermost circle from 30 to 60 minutes as well. Of course, it has the date at 3 o'clock as well. Still remains the biggest Nautilus piece in history with 44 millimeters in diameter. Another aspect that it shares with the 40th anniversary Platinum Jumbo is the presentation box that harkens back to the way that the original stainless steel Patek Philippe Nautilus Jumbo was presented, those cork presentation boxes. And that's a closer view of the crosshair style single chronograph register with the larger hand indicating the hours and the smaller hand counting the minutes. That is lot 44 for the 40th anniversary Nautilus chronograph in white gold, distinctive with its 44 millimeter case. This is the reference 5976 line 1G -001 with the inscription that commemorates the 40th anniversary on the dial right under the signature at 12 o'clock and with the baguette cut diamonds as its hour markers. The piece has a pre-auction estimate that is set between 187,000 to 374,000 in US dollars. And with more than 5 days to go, the piece is being bid at 200,000 Swiss francs, which is just north of $250,000, 250,500 plus. All right, thank you again for being here. I will get back to covering this auction tomorrow, and maybe at an earlier hour. That remains to be seen. I will most certainly. Oh, I'll most certainly see you tomorrow, though. In either case, please hit the like button if you haven't. If you have just chanced upon this live stream, if you have followed me from Instagram, please subscribe here. It is my aim to give you more and more content here, not only in the form of live streams, but also in short to mid form videos as well. So if you have any suggestions, if you have any requests, feel free to leave a comment right after this live stream. I read everything. I also respond to any DMs that you send me on Instagram. I hardly neglect anything. So if you want to stay in touch, that's probably the best way. So feel free to reach me out there if you have any questions, if you need any advice or consultation, which I provide as a professional service, of course, but that's still the best way to reach me and start that initial discussion. And in either case, again, follow me on Instagram, stay subscribed here, and share the link with a wider community of enthusiasts and watch collectors, which helps me to grow this community, but also encourages me, energizes me, and allows me to put more work and higher quality work onto both of those platforms. And most of you already know I work pretty hard, but trust me, I can do it even harder as long as you trust and support me. And there are a few ways that I outline in the video description where you can do that. So thank you again. I'll see you in the next one, most certainly, hopefully already tomorrow. I hope until then you stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches. I'll see you then. Take care.